say, you know what, we need to bump up all these requirements, yeah.
Does this apply to minors as well?
As far as the year,
Or the requirements in the year, yeah.
yeah, absolutely, yep. That's why you could potentially have 3 different catalog years.
Okay,
One for GE, one for major, and one for minor.
okay.
Yes?
I know there's like the catalog that you can access from the web portal. Is that going to be the one that's specific to your year when you open it up, or is it updated per
So
catalog?
the catalog online, you have to make sure that you're looking at the correct year. Yeah. So it'll default to whatever the current academic year is,
Mhm.
but if you know you're in a previous catalog year, yeah, you have to go into archive and make sure you're looking at the correct catalog year. That's a great question. Anything else on that? Okay, cool. Okay, and again, why that's so important, it's because it determines it determines which graduation requirements you're following. So you can find your catalog year on your unofficial transcript as well as your degree evaluation. Okay. So now, yes. Yes.
What page, did you say what page the catalog here was, 6 something?
Let's see.
I think it's page 86.
Oh, sorry, I didn't. Page 86, and it's number 1. It's the top left side of the page. Absolutely. Yeah, it's tricky because it doesn't, unlike some of the other terms that we're talking about, it doesn't call it out specifically. It's kind of buried. Any other questions on that? Okay. All right. So let's move on. Oh, sorry, this is just showing you where it is. So it's page 86, number 1. Yes.
What about like summer sessions? Like, if you like declare in a summer session or something, like, would it be for, so like, let's say you declare you change your major in a summer session of this summer, would it still be in this 2016 to 2017?
As long as it's in the academic year.
Okay.
Yeah, so for example,
It's August to August, right?
yeah, but you've
Okay.
got to pay attention to the date.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's a good question. So for example, if you turn to page 3, and let's say you were on a 15-16 catalog, and you change your major from business to psychology on August 21st. What would be your catalog year? 16, yeah, you got it, 15-16, yep,
Yeah,
because you
okay.
changed it before the next academic year started.
Okay.
Now, let's say that same scenario, the student changed their major, they submitted the form, and it was dated August 23rd, what would their catalog year be?
2016 to 17.
17, you got it,
Okay.
yep. Does that make sense to everybody? Perfect. Yeah, and that, somebody brought up the question about undeclared students, that's gonna be particularly important to them, because, you know, we designed their first year to go after classes that will help them explore deciding on a major. For those of you that came in undeclared, you can know what happens if you wait too long. But another layer to that is if they wait too long and they wait till the next year starts, well, then they're in a whole different catalog that they weren't following to begin with, so, because it wasn't printed. So that can get kind of complicated. Yes?
Should we like advise them, or I guess we would, I'm not sure that we would be talking to them at that point to like buy the new catalog if that happens, or like can they just view it online?
Yeah, but it won't even be printed yet.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so it's more important just to know that the students understand that if they make any changes in a future catalog year, that'll be their new catalog rights.
Okay.
Yeah. Any other questions on that? All right. So we're going to talk about the next term, which is schedule adjustment policy. This is also referred to as the add drop date. It's the same thing. Okay. This is found, it's so important that it's in 3 different places in the catalog. It's found on page 21, it's found on page 111, and it's found on page 478. So, all adjustments to a student's schedule must be completed by the 10th day of term by 11:59 p.m. So it's the one date to remember each semester, because all changes must be made by that date. So for this spring semester, it was yesterday, it was January 31st. So if the changes weren't made by 11:59 yesterday, then come midnight today, that's their schedule. Okay, there's no adjustment after that point. So this includes adding, dropping, changing grading basis, substituting, changing unit value, withdrawing, all one deadline. So, is it a firm deadline? And the answer is yes. No exceptions or changes can be made after the deadline. So, we can't stress this enough, okay? And during new student orientation, during the presentation that I give, we also have our registrar get up and give a presentation at the end of mine about registering, and she spends a lot of time on this because it's a hard deadline. So if the student woke up this morning and found that they are enrolled in a class that they forgot to drop, they are responsible for that class. It sounds simple, it sounds like common sense, right? You left it on your schedule, it's past the direct deadline, you're responsible for it. But there are some students that will enroll in a class and they never attended, or they put themselves on a wait list and they got pulled off the wait list and they didn't check their schedule, or they forgot to drop it, whatever. This is a firm deadline. Okay. Any questions on that? Yes.
We had a question over here. We're wondering, what do you mean by change unit value on the PowerPoint?
Like, let's say for example, maybe you're an internship class and you meant to put it for 2 units, or like a special studies course and you meant to put it for 2 units versus, or 1 unit because it's less hours.
Lab research, stuff like that.
Yeah, and that's usually something a student will have been working with the professor about, or maybe their major advisor. But yeah, that's a good question. Yes?
If you are on a wait list and then you get into the class, will they email you and tell you or something?
Is anyone familiar with the waitlist process?
Yeah, they do email you.
You get an email?
Yeah.
I think you can click like how you would want it to be, so like sometimes you can make it so it'll like automatically put it in your schedule. Like once you get the email, it's like drops anything that's in its way, but you can like choose on the site once you add it.
I think that that's you agreeing to the terms of the waitlist.
Okay.
And then it does what you're talking about, whether, if you get in, it's doing checking. So like it'll automatically drop like the same section,
Yeah.
but if you were, yeah, it does some checking, but yeah, ultimately, the big thing is to monitor your own schedule, and that's what we really want to stress to students. Yes?
Never mind, I'll wait till we talk about the wait list.
You know, we don't really talk a whole lot about the wait list, only because our office doesn't control the wait list, so you can go ahead and throw it out there.
Keep in mind that after like the 5th or 6th day, if you're still on the wait list, it's
Yeah.
5th day, it's no longer automatic. So just like let them know if they have questions, but they have to actually go ask the teacher to enroll people from the wait list.
Yeah, and thank you for pointing that out, that's a great point as well, because after the 5th day of classes, you can, even if there's seats still open in the class, you can't add yourself to the class anymore, you add yourself to the wait list. And then again, you have to go to that professor to ask to be taken off the wait list. Okay, and can anyone venture a guess as to why that is? Why would we not want you automatically enrolling yourself after the 5th day of classes? I heard it. What was that? Yeah, well, I see where you're going with that, but Millen, can you say that a little louder?
You're missing lectures, information, and you might fall too far behind, and at that point, it's probably best for the professor to decide whether or not they think you could qualify to continue on forward with the class.
That's exactly right, yeah. Because it's up to the professor, because even yesterday, we were seeing students that last minute panic, they wanted to add a class, and we had to explain to them, well, you can't add yourself to the class, you have to add it to the wait list. And really, yes, it's the 10th day, but technically speaking, we're in the 3rd week of the semester. So some classes, you've already had a quiz, right? Or some people are like, I've had a test. Serious. And so professors don't necessarily want a student to start at a deficit, right? So it's all there to help the student. Yes?
Wait, so you said after the 5th day, you have to request to go on the wait?
No, if you're on the wait list already, after the 5th day, if you haven't been moved into the class, you have to ask the professor to be moved into the class. And if you are adding the class, even if there's, after the 5th day, even if there's spots available, you have to go on the wait list and ask the professor to move you off the wait list. Any more questions on that? Okay. So, as an example, let's talk about a required registration class. So we're going to discuss more next week, required registration. But if you think back to your freshman year, your first term, the registration system required you to register for certain classes, like oral communication, math, composition, before you could add anything else. So we call those required registration courses. Hypothetically speaking, if the student registered for this, so the system could allow them to register for other classes. So let's say they add their RWS 100, so the system says, okay, you can go ahead and add all your other classes. We definitely don't want them to do that, just adding classes just so they can keep going. They can't drop the course. So they can, because it's a required registration course. So let's say they don't end up attending that oral communication. They're doing themselves some harm, because required registration courses, we take those very seriously. Does that make sense? Yes.
Does that only happen freshman year? Or
Required registration?
Yeah, or are there other situations where
No, that's freshman year.
Okay.
Enforced registration only happens to 4 courses,
Okay.
and that's oral communication, composition, intermediate composition, and math. Now, there's another enforced registration course that could happen later on, and that would be based on the WPA exam,
Okay.
and that would be in relation to a writing class. Any other questions on that? Yes?
Can you just touch on how they change the class if they've already, I don't know if you want to go over that later stuff, but if they've registered for a required registration
Yeah.
and now they want to switch, how that happens?
Yeah, instead, well, because the system won't let you drop it, so yeah, thank you for that. And I do go over it next week, but we can talk about it now. The system won't let the student drop it, so what their option is they can sub it. It's substituting it with another course that clears the same section. So let's say the student registered in Chicano Studies for their composition, and they decide, you know what, I really wanted that RWS 100, it fits in my schedule better. They just have to substitute it. Yes?
So a freshman can't register for any other class until they register for that required registration class?
Yep. Yeah, and session 7, we're gonna be covering personal information sheets, and that's how a student knows what term they have to take which enforced registration course. Yep. Which is why, going back to that AP, it's gonna be really important for those students to have their AP coursework in. Or at least touch base with an advisor to see if there's anything we can do so that we can move things around for them. Yes?
So if there's an enforced registration for like COM 103, but it's for the second semester, can the student opt to do it first semester?
No.
Okay.
And that's a great question. So for composition and oral communication, they're on the map specifically, and they're on their personal information sheet, especially oral communication. And the reason is there's only so many seats, and it's all based on enrollment. So when admissions reports their final numbers, these departments get together and they say, okay, we need to offer 25 sections or whatever it is, right? And it's very pragmatic. Yeah. Yes?
When you say enforced enrollment, I think I remember like actually starting to add oral communications, like it's not automatically on your schedule.
No.
Okay. Where do we find what's enforced?
Yeah, so when you, the student will find it on their personal information sheet, but also when they log into their web portal and they go to My Registration, there'll be a box kind of in the middle, and it'll say you are required to register for these courses before you can register for anything else. And it'll list them there, and it'll list all the courses. So if it's a composition, it'll list every single one that they're eligible to take.